Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we will be reviewing the Benelli TRK 502X. Roll the credits. Okay, the Benelli TRK 502X. This bike came out a couple of years ago in the standard mode, which was the 502, which was the road orientated version of this bike. At the beginning it was a really interesting concept. It was a lot of bike, it looked nice and it was at a good price. I went out, test rode one with a view to buying one. However, there was a major concern with that bike, and that was the brakes. The brakes are absolutely shocking. Now, I don't know whether they've remedied that in later models, comment below, but it was a deal breaker for me and I didn't buy the bike. A couple of years down the line and they released this beast, the 502X, which is the more off-road orientated version of the bike. Glad to say that the brake situation is a lot better on this bike. They are more than adequate for the bike. So let's take a look at the bike and let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Slight differences between the 502X and the 502. Front wheel, 19-inch front wheel, whereas it's 17 front and back on the 502 road version. Position of the exhaust is overswept over the back wheel, whereas on the 502 it comes out in this area down here. Bigger travel suspension, bigger travel on the suspension, should I say, on this bike. Other than that, pretty much the same bike. Oh, this bike also has a centre stand where you did not get a centre stand on the 502, mainly because of where the exhaust is mounted. The tyres, metal adherence, more than adequate for this bike. I've had no concerns with them. Good in the wet, good on uneven surfaces, good on motorways. Never stepped out of line, never felt as though it's going to wash out from underneath me. Excellent tyres. Moving up, the wheels, what can I say, they're round, they're spout. They get you where you want to go. The bike itself, engine wise, there's been a lot said about it being a buzzy engine. Now, let's put this into perspective. It is a twin. Most twins, you're going to get some vibration through the bike. With this bike, once you get to about 60, it does become noticeable, but it's not bad. It doesn't make your hands go numb, your fingers go numb. You know, it just lets you know that the engine's working once you're at speed. Power-wise, another thing that's often said on the internet is that the power isn't very good on this bike. Well, on paper it doesn't look too good. The bike is a heavy bike, don't get me wrong. But when you're actually riding the bike, it's got a nice amount of power. It's adequate. I mean, if you're comparing it to a 1000cc sports bike, then yeah, it's underpowered. But it's not a 1000cc sports bike. It's a 500 touring bike. You know, up to 60, 70 miles an hour, plenty of power. Plenty of power up to 80 miles an hour, roll-on power for overtaking cars on dual carriageways, having fun through the twisties. Once you get to around about the 80 mile an hour, it does level off, it does run out of puff. But, you know, I've rode with bigger bikes, I've kept up with them, I haven't had to thrash the bike, and I've had just as much fun on this bike as they have on their big sports bikes. The seat is very comfortable, I must say. The seat height, however, this is a big beast. So if you're vertically challenged, you're going to have problems with this bike. I've got a 34 inseam leg, and when I sit on the bike, I can just about get the balls of my feet down on the floor. I'm not on tiptoe, the balls of my feet. However, it is a heavy bike, as I've already mentioned. So mauling this thing around off the stand, mauling it around when you're sitting on, if you've got an uneven surface or if you've got a slippy surface, gravel, I find this bike difficult to move around. So if you're inexperienced with big heavy bikes, I don't think this bike is the bike for you. Go for the 502, lower seat height. What else can I say? There's plenty of add-ons for this bike, as you can see. Loads of aftermarket parts, crash bars, spotlights, plenty of panniers, aftermarket screens. You know, if you want to do things to this bike, you can do things to this bike and make it look really, really well. Price wise, I think value for money, this is one of the best bikes you can get at the moment. You know, the nearest thing to this is most probably the Honda CB500X. I don't think it's as good a bike. I think the quality of the build on the Honda is slightly better, and I say slightly, it doesn't mean the build of this bike is not very good at all. It is. It's an excellent build. It's excellent quality. Big thing said about it being made in China. Get real, people. A lot of bikes are made in China now. When you buy your BMW GS 300s, lots and lots of bikes, lots of manufacturers make bikes in China. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And they have caught up. I mean, I've had no problems with this bike whatsoever. So, bit of a quick review there. Downsides of the bike. Headlight. The headlight is dismal on this bike. One of the worst headlights I have ever seen on a motorbike. Not a problem. Buy some spotlight. Problem solved. Also, on the other side of the bike, I will show you in a few moments. This rear peg obstructs putting the centre stand down. You do get used to it, but it's a little niggle. It's not a deal breaker. Okay, here we can see the position of the rear stand. When this comes up, it comes below here, and then when you come to get your foot onto it, like so, this is in the way. Other than that, that is one of the very few things that niggles me on this bike. You can see the shock in there. I didn't mention the shock. I don't know if you can see that. Fully adjustable, preload and rebound. Other than that, as you can see, really nice bike. The exhaust note on this bike is really, really nice. Benelli have done an excellent job. And it does crackle and pop as you roll on and off the throttle. Really nice sounding exhaust. Well done, Benelli. Handling, the bike handles really well. The suspension, it's nice and soft. It's not a hard ride. I found that the original 502 was sprung a little bit harsh for me. This seems to be a lot softer. I suppose it's due to its more off-road orientated setup. It's nice into bends, it doesn't get unsettled. If you're having some fun, you can go into bends, braking hard, accelerate out of the bends hard. It doesn't become bouncy or feels that it's going to step out of line. All in all, a nice setup straight out of the box. The clock on the bike, the instrument panel, what can I say? It's pretty basic. It's an LCD display with an analog rev counter. Very easy to see in the sun, very easy to see at night, no problems there. It's nice and big enough to see everything that's on there. Just gives you basic information, temperature, time, speedo. Obviously it's got a trip A, trip B, and it also gives you a fuel gauge. Absolutely no problems there at all. The instrument panel you see just below it, that is an add-on, that doesn't come standard with the bike. Also you get a nice USB charging port, which is a nice little touch. I think the 2020 model clocks are slightly different. It's the same layout, but I think the tachometer has a white background, and the switch gear as well. Switch gear on here is pretty good. You know, it's as good as on the Honda. Everything feels sturdy, it doesn't feel cheap. And on the 2020 model, I think that's backlit as well, which is another nice touch. It would be nice to have TFT screen, but again, the bike's £5,000, so you've got to bear that in mind. They do have to cut costs somewhere. There's no rider modes on this bike. Again, like I say, I suppose that's cost orientated really. Not a lot else to say. Okay, normally at this point I'd like to take the bike out on the road and give you some on-road footage, talk you through how it handles and performs. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus situation, I'm in lockdown just the same as everybody else. Just like to say a big thank you to all the key workers out there doing an excellent job. Everybody stay home, stay safe, keep yourself safe, keep everybody else safe. One thing I didn't mention about this bike is the price. At the moment, if you go on a well-known auction site on the internet, you can pick these up brand new, 0 miles on the clock, for £5,000. As I said, excellent value for money. Am I happy with this bike? 100%. It's not the best bike I've ever owned, however I would say it's the best value bike that I've ever owned. Go out and test one. Don't listen to all the poor reviews. You know, MCN, they reviewed this bike and I don't know what they were on at the time. They were on something, because it was nowhere near as bad as what they've made out. It's got a nice big fuel tank on it. You get good range on this bike, 200 mile plus easily on this bike. As I said, the brakes are fine. They're not super sharp, but at the same time they give you confidence that you're going to stop when and where you want the bike to stop. You can feel what the front wheel's doing through the brakes. You don't feel as though it's going to wash out from you. It's a nice progressive brake, nice. I wouldn't say it's spongy, but it's smooth, it's linear, it doesn't grab or snatch. The handling of the bike, it is a heavy bike, however, when you get up, you know, above walking speed, that weight goes away and it can actually aid the bike. When you go through the twisties on this bike, it's not flickable, but it turns very well. It feels as though it's on rails. It gives you confidence. If you were a new rider, riding this at speed, you would have no problems with it. The problems would be very slow speed when you're doing U-turns. It's a tall bike, it's heavy, difficult to do U-turns on if you're an inexperienced rider. However, what can I say? Please don't be put off. Go out, test ride one, and I think you will be surprised at how good this bike is. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked, give me a thumbs up and press the subscribe. Bike Riding Reviews out.